alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a returning guest, returning champion, Kathrin Hutson. Welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back here.
I'm glad to have you back. It's been about a bit since you were last on, and with all the with the speed at which you put the amount of effort you put into writing, let's say, not necessarily the speed, but you get a lot of books done. You write a lot.
I certainly do, yeah. As
I aspire to, I think as many aspire to, but some of us have more get up and go than others. Sometimes.
True. I have my sit down and don't go anywhere days too. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I had one of those today actually. I got whooped a little bit, had a headache, that kind of nonsense, but I feel better now. Feel to the point of going a little bit nuts actually. Anyway. So tell the listeners a little bit about your books and the sort of stuff you write in case people aren't familiar, because the show is growing a little bit now.
That is such a good thing. I love it. Yes, I write dark fiction just as a general category. And then most of my stuff is dark, grimdark fantasy or, dark epic fantasy. And my two most recent books are LGBT dystopian sci-fi, and that is the Blue Helix series. I've actually got Sleepwater Static, book 2 in the Blue Helix series is releasing on May 26th, and that'll be my 7th novel out. It's been a while since I've published anything, so this is kind of a big deal. It feels like a whole new step for me, but I operate within the dark realm of fiction, all things that are
within the shadows.
Yes, and the nasty diving deep and, stuff that plenty of people have said, no thanks, it's not for me. And I open my arms to everyone else. That's fine.
Yeah, I like to read some dark fiction. I've come to realize my fiction doesn't tend to be that dark. I think we've talked about that before, maybe on the show. This even when I consider my books to be kind of dark-ish fantasy, I'm like, well, this isn't really that dark. I mean, sure, there's somebody somewhere is getting tortured, probably, but we don't really dwell on that. So,
yeah, that's where I really like.
That's the difference.
Yeah. It's true. I mean, I don't torture characters obscenely for no reason, but I definitely am drawn to the blood and gore and violence and just all the just messed up stuff. It's super fun with a purpose. With a purpose.
As long as you have a purpose, it's okay.
Exactly. It's not gratuitous. What? Yeah.
I mean, I when it comes to mind, things like Joe Abercrombie's books, if you've ever read him, especially the Inquisitor in that book. I'm just because we're talking about torture. Inquisitor Glocta from the First Law trilogy, very cool character, very disturbing. But that's the kind of dark fiction that I've been reading over the past few years that honestly makes me think, well, I should write something like that. But it's maybe a little too bleak for my personal style. I don't know.
That's okay. That is okay. Everyone's got their own limits.
Probably. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And
go on. Keep going.
No, as a self-proclaimed wuss, I should probably just not, shouldn't worry about that. Not going to be going there. That's okay. At least not often.
Sometimes it's nice to dive deep. I have the opposite issue is that I can't seem to write completely happy anything ever.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, do you have any works in progress right now, or, other than ghostwriting stuff? Because I know you do that sometimes too.
See, sometimes.
Or all the time? I don't know.
It is all the time. It's a pretty consistent thing. But I do have 2 works in progress right now, and one is the first book in the Vessel Broken series, which it's a spin-off in the same world, both completely different characters, as the Unclaimed trilogy, which I think is probably what you and I talked about the first time I came on the show. Yeah. So it's a spin-off of that, and just so much darker. And so, I mean, it's not a real spoiler, but everybody dies in the first chapter, and it's brutal. Except for the main character, or one of the main characters. So, that I wrote that chapter, and I was like, yeah, this is going to be the best thing I've ever written.
Oh, that's a great way to start. Like great, not only with the mass murder, but also also the feeling, oh, this is gonna rock. This is gonna be the best.
I think that was the first time that I'd ever felt that way writing chapter 1 of anything. So, when all else fails, kill everyone in chapter 1, and you've got gold. At least that's what it feels like. So that book 1 is Imlock Fractured. It's the first book in the Vessel Broken series, and that is LGBTQ grim dark fantasy for sure. And that will be out at the end of 2020. So I'm thinking October, November. So I've got that going on, and then I'm also just about finished with the first book in a dark urban fantasy series. So I'm kind of switching some things up a little bit. Yeah. And I've been pretty secretive about this project for the most part, because I've been I'm going about this one a whole different way. So I've been learning, so much from my ghostwriting, and about different voices, and about, different writing styles, obviously, but I'm having to replicate those of other well-known authors. But just what I've learned about story structure, and a little bit more about writing for a much broader audience than incredibly dark fiction that tends to turn some people off.
I was going to say, you're learning to write the first chapter where it can be good, but also not everyone has to die in it.
Yes, it is. I'm stretching my muscles of creativity here, but that first book, it's called The Witching Vault. It's the first book in the Accessory to Magic series. So a little bit more of a branded series, 5 books, and that one should be out in the next couple of months. But like I said, I'm being a little hush hush about it.
Oh, for sure,
doing things differently.
So is this one less dark though? Well, maybe I'll try to pry some information out here.
Yeah,
a little less dark, maybe, because I know a lot of. I'll just preface that by saying, or I guess suffix it by saying that I think a lot of urban fantasies tend to be a little more. They lean toward the power fantasy compared to the dark. They've got a bit of both, but the ones I've read tend to lean more on the this guy is awesome power, this woman kicks ass, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So it's kind of like a mix in between. I will say, I don't want to give any spoilers, but the main character in this one, she does kick ass. But she's got some super dark secrets that don't get completely revealed in book 1. So she's it's basically a formerly incarcerated witch inherits a magical bank, and the clientele are almost as dangerous as what's inside their safety deposit boxes. So,
that's a great little tagline there, actually.
Thank you. Oh, I left out the greatest part, the magical bank that can think for itself. It's also the punch in there. Yeah, so it's been really, really fun, and I'm super excited about it. And it's great to work in a new world in urban fantasy, which I found that is definitely one of my strengths with ghostwriting. So I figured I'd bring it under my own umbrella and see what happens. But yeah, so it sounds like you're already interested. That's great.
No, definitely. I mean, I gotta say, it does kind of sound like a little bit. It kind of reminded me initially of that the final season of Angel, where they're actually running the magic law firm, the evil law firm.
Oh yeah, I haven't even thought about that.
Because there's also there's the guys upstairs they are based almost like sentient building kind of stuff. I mean, there's some parallels, but not in a bad way. Obviously, it's intriguing. Yes,
good.
And a bank is probably. Well, I mean, if anything is more evil than a law firm, you found it, I think.
Right.
Potentially, anyway.
Yeah. It's been very, very fun. There's a lot of snark and a lot of just like crazy action and everything happening all at once and getting interrupted, and there's a murder mystery, and it's great. I've been having a lot of fun. So
Oh, yeah. Do you have a lot of experience with the mystery side?
I haven't written like mystery as a direct genre specifically, but I always put a little bit of that into everything I write anyways, because it spices things up. But so it's not I'm not writing like a detective or anything.
For sure.
But yeah, I like the mystery, and I like the figuring out the secrets, and that's a super fun thing for me because I don't, very similar to you, I don't do a lot of plotting. So I get to work this mystery out on my own as I'm writing. So, I have recently, in the last, since we talked, transitioned into writing beats for everything I write for myself and ghostwriting. And so that's, about 5 to 8,000 words, depending on projected book length, of just summary, basically. And that really helps speed up my writing time too, because I know, I finish the scenes and blend it into the next, and then I can check what I already wrote and just, flesh that out some more. And that's been helpful. But, chapter by chapter outlines still don't do it for me. I can't go that deep.
Oh, that's funny because the thing I've done is actually step back even further from outlining to enjoy the story more, and it seems to be working. It seems to be making me go a little faster, even, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
but
that is awesome.
I mean, like now that the dictation is like I can just do that on the regular. I can do 10 or 12,000 words a day pretty easily. That's nice.
Nice. So you've gotten there with the dictation. That's awesome. Last time we spoke, you were just starting to try it out.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I must.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. It's almost a year ago. Yeah, okay. Because I started last summer, and I guess I did one book with that, and I'll skip around a little bit. But the second book, I did one book like with the first kind of beta testing my dictation style, and now the sequel to that one is the one I'm working on. It's actually a fantasy with murder mystery elements, an epic fantasy murder mystery elements in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not out yet, of course, because I'm so slow at making this. I've been very slow at refining the process. And I had to throw out 80,000 words at the beginning of April. No, or was it March? It was one of those months. No, it was April.
The beginning. Breaking.
Yeah, because I went down the wrong direction. I dictated 85,000 words in this book, and I'm like, oh, only the first 5,000 are any good. The rest of them go off in a place that I don't really want, almost completely unworkable.
Man.
And so I went back to the beginning. And it took me a while to realize I needed to do that. So it's funny how many people, whenever I tell them that, other writers, when I tell them, they're like, oh boy, that sounds so bad. But it really was very liberating to do. To realize, like, I just didn't do the story I wanted. I mean, parts of it are still going to be in there in some way, but it was too rough to bother trying to fix it at that point.
Right. And yes, I've been there as well. It is nice to be able to say, you know what, I don't need this, and just toss it aside, throw it off.
I mean, it's still there. It's just I moved it out of the main folder into the garbage folder, basically. But it's still there. It'll be saved for posterity, if I ever need it.
Which is good. Yes, never.
Yes.
I have never thrown any written words away.
Yeah, I've never just up and deleted anything on purpose. I have lost a few things, but no, I'm not that. I mean, I think you have to be pretty capricious to just say, no, this is useless, I'm going to delete it. And
right.
I know people do that. Actually, one of my guests on this podcast just recently, Nathan Lowell, has done that. And he's a very fast writer, but he'll delete 10 or 15,000 words. Sometimes more, I think. He deletes like tons of words sometimes if he goes off in the wrong direction, because he just discovers, and then he goes like, oh, I didn't need this part. Chop. Yeah.
Wow.
And he'll actually delete it, which is it's probably very liberating. That's how he says it. But on the other hand, extremely scary. What if something good was in there?
Right. I'm like, what are you going to do? Yeah.
Anyway.
I took out about 12,000 words from Daughter of the Draken before I finally got it out there. And that was, of course, that was after 9 years of sitting on it and not doing anything. And then I went back through and I was like, oh, just cut. Great.
Well, but it's a little different when you're editing, right? Like, as opposed to when it's like, I'm still in the rough draft and I just can't do anything with this anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, I have not come across that experience. So,
well, I had never done it before to that degree. I mean, I've lost whole books before because I'm kind of like, I'll be bored with the book or I'll take too long on it and I'll be like, nah, this isn't going to work. Or I feel stupid writing it. And I'm like, once I feel stupid, it's only a matter of time before the book falls apart because I'm not enjoying it anymore. And then it just goes on the shelf forever, pretty much. I know never say never, but a lot, I've done that to like 5 or 6 books. Some of which were almost complete. And I'm like, no, this isn't good enough. And that's how I spent my 20s, by the way. But the thing is, writing books that no one will ever read.
You got to do it at some point.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, not actually, but I know a lot of people. Yeah, and a lot of people think that's crazy. I mean, I would just not to just go make this a callback to a bunch of other shows. But one of the other recent episodes was with Mallory Cooper, and she says she never likes to write things that aren't going to go in the book, which is really cool. I'm actually kind of taking that as a piece of advice, even though I'm not sure if she intended it that way. I'm like, yeah, write less stuff that doesn't go in the book. Maybe not nothing. Yeah. But, right. I just like, because I was procrastinating by planning, and I realized I've never used these plans. These plans are they're wasting my time.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a cool little wake up call there. Anyway.
Good. No, that's great. Yeah.
So as for to get back to your books and stuff, I've got to say, with the techniques of writing urban fantasy versus epic dark fantasy, right? Mm-hmm. What kind of do you go for the different kind of language? I mean, or in the epic fantasy, do you do more not esoteric, old time language kind of stuff?
Yes, absolutely.
Kind of almost, yeah.
Yeah. So my dialogue is, I mean, it's not archaic, but you're not going to hear modern lingo in my epic dark fantasy, because it is, all of it is in a medieval-esque setting, right?
Yeah.
That's how I prefer to do it, and for that particular subgenre of fantasy, and so I'm really a stickler for that too. Like I won't write anything in there like "you guys" or sometimes like even contractions are not okay, and I'm like, and then sometimes they are, but I really am different about that, and there's a whole different kind of
no, it's a different personality to the dialogue in urban fantasy, especially.
Absolutely, and there's I like to include banter in both of those genres, but they're so different, like it's much harder to make just like a dumb comment banter that's not witty when you're writing, the high epic fantasy dialogue than just someone being like, oh yeah, no kidding, like
yeah
something with urban fantasy. So it's totally different, and there's definitely different styles to it, which this will be, this urban fantasy series will be definitely a different style than I think what any of my other readers have seen before. But all of my series are so different from each other anyway, including the writing style, because of the genre, that I'm hoping that my readers who have loved all my other stuff won't have a problem making another switch into urban fantasy with me. And it's still dark, and it's not, it's got my own special twist on it.
Oh, I'm sure it does. Yeah, I usually think the transition between epic fantasy and urban fantasy is probably easier for the epic fantasy reader. Because if you can read epic fantasy, you can still understand modern lingo, I guess. I mean, I think most readers can anyway. I'm trying to imagine a person who only understands like Shakespearean or epic fantasy lingo and doesn't like, what's a motorcycle? What's a car?
Right.
I don't get this stuff. What's that mean?
How does it tie with magic? I don't know. I would think it's easier to go that way for sure. And then it's just trying to open things up a little bit for a wider range, and we'll see what happens. It's just one big experiment, which I love, and I love being able to do that, and crossing my fingers for it. But it's been super fun to get really in deep in an urban fantasy world that I get to keep.
Oh yeah.
So that's been pretty exciting.
No, that's I have a really hard time. Like I did ghostwrite for a little bit, but I have a really hard time doing it. It's so difficult to write in a setting where it's like, no, this isn't mine. But I still have to write it like it's mine at first, kind of. I got to put as much effort into it as maybe more than I would if it was mine.
Right.
And
Well, I do.
That's difficult for me anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's totally understandable. I mean, like we as writers are very closely tied to our work, and I mean, don't get me wrong. Like my ghost written stuff after it's published, I stalk the heck out of it. I read all the reviews and I go see like sales rankings, and I want to know what people think, even though I'm not going around saying, hey, this is mine, but I'm still attached to it in some parts. But I have to honestly say I keep all the best ideas for myself.
Of course,
that's also a plus.
Isn't that just a trade secret? Basically, no, we keep those. They're really the best stuff. At least what we think is the best stuff, right?
Right.
Yeah, because there's some. I mean, because if you're writing a book to order, it's like, well, they clearly have a vision. Your employers do, or my employers did for sure.
Right.
You got to change the things.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate to develop an incredible relationship with one of my clients, who is a fairly big publisher, actually. And so I was offered the opportunity to help them develop an idea that catered to my own personal sweet spots of fiction writing, especially urban fantasy. And so, we kind of picked apart my favorite kind of characters, and we brainstormed this whole storyline, and it exploded. So that's where the work and the joy really come together. I mean, I just love writing fiction, like period, which I think I've mentioned before. Just the act of it is what really gets me going. And so I don't matter so much, or I don't matter so. I don't
it
care
doesn't
so
matter.
much.
You don't
thank
care.
You. Well, it doesn't matter so much whether my name's going on it, because I know that the story is still getting seen, it's still being enjoyed, it's still having fantastic reader response, and I just have a hell of a lot of fun putting it together. So then, especially with something that was pretty specifically tailor made to my strengths and enjoyment, where they meet in that beautiful space of synchronicity. That series for this client has been doing very, very, very well, and that's a bit of a magic spot. So after the first few series that I wrote for them, I decided that hey, I think I might have another superpower genre. Let's try it out, and
that rocks.
yeah, it was pretty great. I pitched some ideas to this client, and they're like, "Nah, we don't want that." I was like, "Okay, cool. I'm gonna write this myself then."
Right, Magic Bank.
Yeah.
Here we come. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
But that actually does remind me. That's been. I mean, it is a little late in the podcast now to get into this. That's why maybe I should have a little more longer than a 25-30-minute show. But sometimes maybe. But I was gonna say, just enjoying the process has been the thing I've been focusing on lately. So because if you just and I say it by you, I mean me, because you obviously know this. If I'm just in the book, in the words, telling the story, there's nothing else to worry about. I can just go, and it works. It's much easier. Right. The story comes out better. Everything's stronger. It's just it's like the technique, the Uber technique. Mm-hmm. that makes all the other techniques work.
Yes. Yeah,
Getting in
it
there.
really is. Yeah, finding that zone, and it all happens when you're loving what you're doing, and everything else can just fall away, and it doesn't, nothing else matters. And I love that part. And then of course, there's the downside to it, because I start writing at 5 o'clock in the morning these days, and I stop at 5 o'clock in the evening, and before I know it, my entire done, and I'm like, well, I wanted to keep going though, and where's my day? Well, okay, I guess we're
Okay,
done then. I'll just
so remind our listeners, how many words do you think you get done in a 12,000 word day, or do you not count?
Oh no,
A 12-hour day,
I
like that. Sorry.
yeah, no, I'm very I'm so anal about counting my words. I have a spreadsheet that's been running for the last 6 months by my sprint times. So I in a 12-hour workday, I typically write it's average between 13 and 16,000 words. Actually,
That's a lot of
13 is
words.
very yeah. So that's if I'm taking 2 1-hour breaks in a 12-hour day. About 13 to 16, and then sometimes it pumps up a little bit more. My daily record currently stands at 23,000 in about 17 hours, and
Wowie.
I don't
That's a lot
feel
of
the need
writing
to.
time specifically.
It
That seems like
is
a
in
lot.
a
That's like
day.
overkill.
Yeah, that's pretty much when I stay up super late to finish a book for deadline. So,
Oh, the classic story. Like that,
I mean,
what was it? There was, I think it was Hunter S. Thompson. It was
mhm.
at the beginning. It was his book about. I mean, it was journalism, but it was still hilarious. And and he based the way he wrote right. It wrote articles for journalistic styles, journalistic papers, whatever. He wrote that stuff like for Rolling Stone and whatever. He wrote it exactly like he was writing a book, and it's insane. I've actually read some of his following Nixon on the campaign trail, the campaign trail, well,
Oh
not
yeah,
following against Nixon,
yeah.
19 whatever 70 something. And it's so crazy that at the very beginning he's like, oh, they're asking me for the paper now. Like it's like he's presumably he's typing this, but like they're asking me when
Right.
I'll be done, and
It's
it's like
just
why this stream of consciousness
I
into
was
this
literally just
article,
gonna say that. Yep. Yeah. And
and it lives
sometimes
to this day.
sometimes that's what gets the pumps going, for that process of just getting into it. It's just stream of consciousness. You can always go back and edit it out, but if you start a day or a scene or an hour or whatever when you're writing, and just blah, 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 whatever comes to mind, then you start, I found I don't so much blah, blah, blah anymore,
Yeah,
but
no more words on it, none of that.
yeah, not so much.
Got
I'm
all
pretty.
that out. Now it's just a stream. It's a flowing stream.
Yes, the flowing stream. Funny, super funny that you just pulled up Hunter S. Thompson, because I'm actually wearing a hoodie with his face on it right now.
That's kind of spooky. I mean, he wasn't like that scary looking, but come on.
No, I mean, he's got a cigarette hanging out of his lips and a hat,
Oh
and
yeah,
his fedora, and the big old aviator sunglasses. It's just, it's a great hoodie.
yeah. Be careful. This is backcountry.
Yeah. Oh no.
You'll see them soon enough. Anyway. Oh
No.
jeez. It is that's probably enough tangent there. So we don't really have time to do a reading section this week. But yeah, tell people where they can find your books and your stuff on the internet.
Yes. I can be found at KathrinHutsonFiction.com. First is my website, and that's just been recently updated into this grand and glorious thing that I'm in love with. So check that out if you're interested. You can also find me at Kathrin Hutson Fiction. It's my Facebook page. Kathrin Hutson Fiction on Instagram as well, and Exquisitely Dark on Twitter. I have the Unclaimed trilogy. I actually just stuck back in Kindle Unlimited, so that is available for KU subscribers, and all my other books are available across the board: Amazon, Apple, Kobo, Barnes and Noble, And I've got Sleepwater Static coming out on May 26th. It's a big deal. Big book, big, super fun. Fun for me.
Dystopia.
Yes. Dystopian
Horrifying,
fun
maybe.
at its finest. Yeah, with some twists and some real diving deep into some deep topics that I felt needed to be explored and shared with the world. And it's coming out very soon. I'm really excited, and that's where you can find me.
Excellent. And thanks for being on the show, Kathrin. It's always fun. Always good to touch base with you and ask you some questions, maybe get some answers. I mean, definitely get some answers. Let's just say that.
Yes, you've got them.
And to run off the rails a little bit. Talk about Hunter S. Thompson. Why not? All right.
That's what makes it fun. Thank you for having me, Tim. I appreciate
You're welcome. You're very welcome. And as for this podcast, folks, you can find us at mentalcellarpublications.com. We are hosted by Libsyn. And also, you can find my books on Amazon.com. Currently, we're pretty much exclusive, but if you go to bookfunnel.com, I really should find the link for this somewhere. You can get the free series entry in my epic fantasy series, which is it's called The Crimson Suitor, and that's on BookFunnel exclusively. You just have to sign up for my mailing list to join and get that book. So try that one out. If you haven't read Demon Scroll yet, that's a great place to start too. And if you have read Demon Scroll, you'll get a lot more out of that book too, because they're in the same setting, some of the same characters are in them, not one of them. But anyway, we're not spoiling any of that. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good weekend. Have a good week. Talk to you soon. Bye.